My name is Arthur Penhaligon, and for nearly a decade I carried a quiet, burning ember of resentment within me, a subtle hum beneath the surface of my otherwise calm existence in Willow Creek, Surrey. My life here, nestled in the gentle folds of the North Downs, had always been one of predictable rhythms and understated beauty. I loved the old stone cottages, the winding lanes hedged with hawthorn, the scent of damp earth after a spring rain. I was 27 now, a software developer by trade, my days spent crafting intricate lines of code, a meticulous pursuit that mirrored my own temperament. I enjoyed order, logic, and the satisfaction of a problem cleanly solved. My world was one of quiet contemplation, of long walks through the rolling hills, of books read by the fire, a world that for the most part I found deeply fulfilling. I was, if I had to describe myself, a creature of habit, someone who found comfort in the familiar and appreciated the small details, like the precise part in my dark, wavy hair, which I meticulously styled each morning. It was a small vanity, perhaps, but it was mine, a part of my identity. My younger sister, Clara, 2 years my junior, was everything I was not. She was a whirlwind, a force of nature wrapped in a bright, captivating smile. Clara was the life of every party, effortlessly charming, with a mischievous glint in her eyes that promised both laughter and, occasionally, chaos. Our childhood was a tapestry woven with typical sibling squabbles, but also with her increasingly elaborate pranks. At first, they were harmless, childish antics, a rubber spider in my bed, a forgotten bucket of water above my door, a fake snake in my lunchbox. I'd roll my eyes, grumble, but secretly, I even found a perverse sort of amusement in her creativity, a grudging admiration for her audacity. Our parents, bless their hearts, were often caught in the crossfire, attempting to mediate the endless sibling rivalry. They would scold Clara, of course, but her effervescent charm often seemed to disarm them, and her apologies, while seemingly sincere in the moment, rarely led to a lasting change in her behavior. They saw it as youthful exuberance, a sign of her vibrant personality, and perhaps didn't always fully grasp the underlying currents of annoyance, or later, genuine hurt, that sometimes rippled beneath the surface for me. I tried to explain, to articulate the subtle cruelty that sometimes accompanied her jokes, but it always seemed to bounce off them, dismissed as just Clara being Clara. As we grew older, her pranks became more sophisticated, more personal, and less funny. It wasn't about scaring me anymore. It felt more about exerting control, about proving she could get a rise out of me, about seeing my carefully maintained composure crumble. She knew I was particular about my things, about my routine, and she'd exploit that knowledge with a precision that was almost surgical. My meticulously organized desk would be subtly rearranged. A single, vital document vanished, only to reappear days later in an absurd location. My favorite pair of trainers would mysteriously develop holes in the soles overnight, or my carefully curated collection of rare vinyl records would be rearranged alphabetically by the color of the album cover, rather than by artist, a small act of rebellion that only someone who knew me intimately would understand. Each time I'd confront her, and each time she'd either feign innocence with wide, innocent eyes or burst into peals of laughter, making me feel foolish for my frustration. Our parents would intervene, a stern word for Clara, a pat on the shoulder for me, and the cycle would continue, each incident adding another tiny chip to the foundation of my patience. Then came my prom night, the culmination of 7 years of secondary school, a rite of passage, a monumental event in the small-town social calendar of Willow Creek. I was 17, buzzing with a mixture of excitement and nerves. I had spent weeks planning my outfit, a perfectly tailored dark blue suit, a crisp white shirt, a silk tie the color of twilight. I had even arranged for a professional haircut a few days prior, ensuring every strand of my dark, wavy hair fell just so. I was proud of my hair. It was thick, healthy, and I had always taken care of it. It was one of my better features, I thought, and on a night like prom, every detail mattered. I had secured a date, a lovely girl named Alina, who I hoped to impress, and I had visions of a perfect evening, dancing under glittering lights, celebrating the end of an era with my friends, creating memories that would last a lifetime. The air in our house that evening was thick with anticipation, the scent of cologne and hairspray mingling with the excitement. I had showered, carefully washed my hair with my favorite expensive shampoo, and was humming a tune as I toweled it dry, ready to style it. That was when I felt it, a strange, slick sensation on my scalp, followed by a disconcerting resistance as I ran my fingers through my hair. I looked down at my hand. Tufts. Clumps of dark, wavy hair clung to my fingertips, wet and lifeless. My heart lurched, a cold dread seizing me. I ran my hands through my hair again, more vigorously this time, and more came out, falling into the sink like dark leaves. Panic clawed at my throat. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, my face paling. Large, irregular patches of scalp were suddenly visible, stark white against the remaining dark strands. It looked like I had been attacked by a crazed barber wielding dull shears. My mind raced, trying to comprehend what was happening. It was then that my gaze fell upon the shampoo bottle on the shower ledge, its label slightly askew. I picked it up, my hands trembling. It wasn't my shampoo. It was a familiar bottle, one I had seen in Clara's bathroom, a generic, heavily fragranced brand. And then I saw it, scrawled almost imperceptibly in faded marker on the back. Hair removal cream. Do not use on hair. The blood drained from my face. Clara, it could only be Clara. My stomach churned with a toxic mix of betrayal and absolute, crushing humiliation. My carefully planned evening, my image, my pride, all of it dissolving like the hair on my head. I stormed out of the bathroom, a primal roar escaping my lips, the shower towel still wrapped around my waist. Clara, my voice cracked with rage and despair. She was in her room humming a pop song, oblivious, or so she feigned. She looked up, her innocent smile faltering as she saw my face, probably smeared with bits of wet hair. "What's wrong, Arthur?" she asked, her voice laced with feigned concern. "What's wrong?" I repeated, my voice rising in a crescendo of disbelief. "You tell me what's wrong." "What did you do to my shampoo?" Her eyes widened, a flicker of something unreadable passing through them before she quickly plastered on a look of shock. "Oh my goodness, Arthur. Did you accidentally use my new conditioner? Mum bought it for me, it's very strong." She was lying, I knew it. The faint scent of the cheap, sickly sweet fragrance of the hair removal cream still clung to my fingers. "Don't play dumb, Clara. This wasn't conditioner. My hair is falling out. For prom, Clara, my prom night." My voice broke at the end, the sheer cruelty of it sinking in. She finally dropped the act, a small, knowing smirk playing on her lips before she quickly covered it with her hand. "Oh, Arthur, you're being so dramatic. It's just hair. It'll grow back." Her nonchalance, her dismissal of my anguish, ignited a fresh wave of fury within me. It was just hair. It was a deliberate, malicious act, timed for the most important night of my young life. Our parents, drawn by my shouts, rushed into the hallway. "Arthur, what in heaven's name is going on?" my mother asked, her face etched with concern. My father, calmer, surveyed the scene, his eyes flicking from my patchy scalp to Clara's nervous expression. I tried to explain, to articulate the horror, holding out the handfuls of hair I had already lost. Clara, meanwhile, burst into theatrical tears, claiming it was an accident, that she had simply left her special conditioning treatment out and I must have mistaken it for my own. My parents, in their typical fashion, tried to placate both of us. They were clearly shocked by the extent of the damage to my hair, but they seemed unable to fully grasp the malicious intent behind it. "Clara, that was very careless of you," my mother said, her voice stern but lacking the true bite of anger. My father sighed, rubbing his temples. "Arthur, son, we'll get you to a stylist, see what can be done." But I knew what had to be done. There was no saving my hair. It was patchy, uneven, and continuing to fall out in chunks. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror again, the reflection a grotesque parody of the elegant young man I had hoped to be. And then, a strange calm settled over me. If Clara wanted to humiliate me, I would meet her halfway, but on my own terms. I would embrace the humiliation, turn it into a defiant statement. I marched back into the bathroom, grabbed my father's electric clippers from the cabinet, and without a moment's hesitation, began to shave my head. The buzz of the clippers was loud in the sudden silence of the house. My parents stood in the doorway, their faces a mixture of shock and dismay. Clara, still sniffling dramatically in the hallway, watched with wide, tear-filled eyes, probably not quite believing I would go through with it. I watched my hair fall to the floor, my dark locks disappearing with each pass of the blade until my scalp was smooth and bare. It was a shocking transformation, but there was a strange, liberating power in it. I couldn't control what Clara had done to me, but I could control my reaction. I would go to prom, bald, a living testament to her cruelty, and she would have to live with that. The prom itself was a blur of whispers and averted gazes. Eleanor, bless her heart, was incredibly kind and understanding. She tried to make light of it, but I could see the pity in her eyes and the occasional furtive glance at my shiny scalp. Every conversation felt stilted. Every dance felt like I was under a spotlight. I saw the shocked faces, the open mouths, the quickly whispered comments among my classmates. I saw Clara across the room, dancing with her friends, looking carefree. She didn't approach me, didn't offer a word of genuine apology, didn't even acknowledge the spectacle I had become because of her. And in that moment, as I stood there, bald and exposed, amidst the glittering lights and forced smiles, a cold, hard resolve solidified within me. This wasn't just another prank. This was a deliberate act of public humiliation, and it would not go unpunished. The seed of revenge was planted that night, a tiny, hard kernel of bitterness that began to grow in the fertile ground of my wounded pride. A few months later, I left Willow Creek for university, a scholarship secured, a new chapter beckoning. The move was a welcome escape, a chance to shed the persona of the boy who went bald for prom and start afresh. I threw myself into my studies, excelled in my courses, and built a new life for myself, far from the subtle tyranny of my sister's pranks. I cut my hair short, a sensible, no-fuss style, but I never let it grow long again. The memory of that night, of the cold scalp and the whispers, was too vivid, too painful. I maintained contact with my family, of course, dutifully calling my parents every Sunday, exchanging polite texts with Clara on birthdays and holidays. But the warmth, the easy camaraderie that once existed between us, was gone, replaced by a polite distance. Our conversations were superficial, devoid of any genuine intimacy. I never brought up the prom night incident, and neither did she. It was an unspoken chasm between us, a silent accusation on my part, a deliberate evasion on hers. My parents occasionally tried to bridge the gap, suggesting we talk it out, but I always demurred. What was there to talk about? The damage was done, the apology never truly offered, the understanding never truly reached. The quiet hum of resentment continued, a constant companion, a reminder of the injustice I had suffered and the unresolved debt I believed was owed. Every achievement I made, every step forward in my career, felt like a small victory against the lingering shadow of that night, but it wasn't enough to truly erase the memory. I was successful, I was independent, but I was not whole. Not yet. The years that followed my departure from Willow Creek were marked by a steady, almost deliberate march towards professional success. I poured my energy into my software development career, finding solace and satisfaction in the intricate logic of code, in the creation of elegant solutions to complex problems. I secured a good-paying job straight out of university and climbed the ranks quickly, my meticulous nature and unwavering focus serving me well. My colleagues respected me, my superiors valued my contributions, and for the most part I cultivated a calm, controlled exterior. I made new friends, dated occasionally, and built a comfortable life in a bustling city, far from the quiet lanes of Willow Creek. But even as I built this new life, the shadow of that prom night, the humiliation, the betrayal, lingered. It wasn't an open wound anymore, but a deep scar, a sensitivity that never quite faded. It affected how I trusted people, making me guarded, slow to reveal vulnerability. I found myself scrutinizing others for hidden motives, a direct result of Clara's unpredictable malice. The memory of her smirk, her casual dismissal of my pain, was etched into my mind, a permanent reminder of how easily someone you loved could hurt you. I tried to move on, genuinely. I tried therapy for a while, hoping to process the lingering anger and resentment. The therapist encouraged me to let go, to forgive, to find peace within myself regardless of whether Clara ever acknowledged the depth of her wrongdoing. I understood the wisdom in her words, intellectually. I knew holding onto anger was ultimately more damaging to me than to Clara. I tried to meditate, to practice mindfulness, to reframe the incident as a learning experience. I focused on new hobbies, on building meaningful relationships with people who brought positivity into my life. But every time I thought I had finally buried it, a small interaction, a seemingly innocuous comment, would bring it all rushing back. During my occasional visits home, the tension between Clara and me was palpable, a thinly veiled politeness that everyone pretended not to notice. She would make an effort, sometimes, to be overly friendly, to joke about our childhood, but never, not once, did she offer a genuine, unprompted apology for that specific night. Her apologies were always generic, swept under the rug as just sibling stuff, or accompanied by a dismissive wave of her hand. Once, during a family dinner, the conversation turned to hairstyles, and Clara, without thinking, remarked how lucky I was to have such manageable hair, patting my short crop with a faux sympathetic smile. The casual cruelty of her words, the absolute lack of self-awareness, sent a jolt of ice through me. She truly had no idea, or she simply didn't care. That made it worse. I tried to talk to my parents about it again, years later, hoping that with time their perspective might have shifted. "Don't you think what Clara did that night was deeply cruel, Mum?" I asked once during a quiet moment. My mother sighed, a familiar weariness in her voice. "Oh, Arthur, she was just a child. And boys are always playing pranks on each other. It's been so long. You've grown into such a handsome young man, it clearly didn't hurt you in the long run." My father, ever the pragmatist, chimed in. "Let bygones be bygones, son. There's no point holding on to grudges. It only hurts you." Their inability to truly see the depth of my hurt, to acknowledge the severity of Clara's actions beyond a fleeting scolding, only deepened my sense of isolation and injustice. They wanted a tidy, conflict-free family, and my lingering resentment was an inconvenient truth they preferred to ignore. This constant invalidation of my feelings, the brushing aside of what I considered a significant emotional wound, fueled the simmering anger. It made me realize that the problem wasn't just what Clara had done, but the family's collective refusal to properly address it, to truly hold her accountable. The problem had grown from a specific incident into a deep-seated grievance that permeated my family relationships. I felt unseen, unheard, and perpetually stuck in that 17-year-old moment of humiliation. My desire for revenge, which had been a vague, abstract notion for so long, began to crystallize. It wasn't about petty spite. It was about balance, about justice, about finally achieving a sense of closure that no amount of therapy or parental platitudes could provide. I had spent countless hours over the years, late at night, fantasizing about various forms of retaliation. Ruining her wedding was always the top contender, but I discarded crude, impulsive ideas quickly. I wouldn't do anything that could be easily traced back to me, or anything that would cause irreversible physical harm. My revenge had to be poetic, precise, and mirror the original transgression in its specific, public humiliation, but also in its non-permanence. It had to be about proving a point, not about destroying her life. But when? How? The opportunity never seemed quite right. There were moments when I considered letting it go, moments of genuine exhaustion with the weight of my grudge. I'd try to convince myself that I was above it, that I had moved past it, that my life was too good to be tainted by such a distant, juvenile slight. I'd try to reason with myself, telling myself that true maturity meant letting go of such petty grievances. But then, something would happen to drag me back down into the depths of my unresolved anger. It was during a particularly difficult period at work, a high-pressure project that had left me feeling drained and vulnerable, that Clara announced her engagement. I received the call from my mother, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Clara's getting married. To Rupert, you know, the lovely chap she's been seeing. It's going to be a huge affair, darling, all planned for next summer." My initial reaction was a polite congratulations, a feigned enthusiasm that felt hollow even to my own ears. But then, a few weeks later, I received a series of beaming photographs from Clara herself. She looked radiant, holding up her hand to display a dazzling engagement ring, her hair styled perfectly, cascading down her shoulders. Her accompanying message was effusive, detailing the elaborate plans for the wedding, the grand venue, the designer dress, the meticulously planned guest list. And then, at the end, almost as an afterthought, she wrote, "So excited for my big day, Arthur. Every girl dreams of her fairy tale wedding, don't they? And I absolutely must look perfect, especially my hair. Wouldn't want a bad hair day on the most important day of my life." That last line hit me like a physical blow. Wouldn't want a bad hair day on the most important day of my life. It was so utterly clueless, so oblivious to the wound she had inflicted all those years ago, a wound she had never properly acknowledged. It was a casual, unthinking comment, but it pierced through the years of carefully constructed composure, igniting the ember of resentment into a full-blown blaze. In that moment, I knew. This was it. This was the opportunity I had been waiting for, the perfect stage for my poetic justice. My heart began to pound with a quiet, exhilarating determination. The idea that had once seemed vague and distant now became sharply focused. The wedding, her fairytale day, the culmination of her dreams of perfection, would become the mirror of my own public humiliation. It wasn't about causing her pain, not exactly. It was about making her understand, truly understand, the precise nature of the pain she had inflicted. It was about fairness, about balance. The thought consumed me. I began to research meticulously. I remembered the distinctive smell of the hair removal cream, the exact texture. I spent hours online, delving into old forums, beauty blogs, even obscure chemical composition sites, trying to identify the specific brand she had used, or at least one with very similar properties. It was a brand popular with teenagers at the time, easily accessible. I ordered several different types, subtly, from various online retailers, having them delivered to a post office box in a different town, leaving no digital trail. I studied their effects on hair samples, testing them on strands of my own hair from my brush, observing the speed and efficacy of their action. I wanted to be certain. I needed it to be perfect, just as she had aimed for perfection on her wedding day. Over the next few months, during my obligatory visits home, I became an observer, a silent, methodical detective. I watched Clara's routine, her habits, her almost ritualistic approach to her beauty regimen, particularly her hair. I noticed the specific brands of shampoo and conditioner she favored, the expensive ones, the ones she kept in her shower caddy. I paid attention to the timing of her showers, whether she showered in the morning or the evening, whether she left the bathroom door locked. I noted the family's general patterns, when the house was empty, when the bathroom was most likely to be unoccupied. I even subtly questioned my mother about Clara's wedding day preparations, extracting details about her pre-wedding beauty treatments, her plan for getting ready, the timeline of events. I learned that Clara planned to have a long, luxurious shower the night before the wedding, followed by a final hair treatment, preparing it for the stylist who would arrive early on the wedding morning. This was it. This was my window. The opportunity to replicate her act, but with the added significance of striking at the pinnacle of her perceived perfection. The weight of the plan felt heavy, yet exhilarating. It was no longer just about anger. It was about precision, about the methodical pursuit of justice. I didn't gloat internally, didn't cackle like a villain. Instead, I felt a calm, almost surgical detachment. This wasn't personal anymore in the raw, emotional sense. It was a problem that needed solving, a debt that needed settling, a balance that needed to be restored. And the only way to truly solve it, I had come to believe, was through this specific, carefully executed act. My life wouldn't be truly free, I felt, until this score was settled. The constant ache of injustice, the feeling of being perpetually wronged, would finally dissipate, allowing me to move forward, truly unburdened. The wedding invitation arrived, a thick, embossed card inviting me to witness Clara's joyous occasion. I accepted, of course, a polite acceptance sent back promptly. My journey back to Willow Creek was not one of celebration, but of purpose. I was finally returning to settle a 9-year-old score, to reclaim my dignity, and to find a peace that had long eluded me. The stage was set, and the final act was about to begin. The week leading up to Clara's wedding felt like a slow-motion countdown, each tick of the clock amplifying the quiet hum of anticipation within me. I arrived in Willow Creek 2 days before the ceremony, feigning a relaxed demeanor, hugging my parents, making polite small talk with Clara. She was a whirlwind of bridal energy, utterly consumed by dress fittings, flower arrangements, and seating charts. Her excitement was almost unbearable to witness, a stark contrast to the quiet focus of my own mission. I observed her, a phantom presence in the background of her frantic preparations. My parents, as always, were delightful, chatting about the local gossip, asking about my job in the city, entirely unaware of the intricate plan unfolding beneath their very roof. They were thrilled to have both their children home, celebrating what they believed would be a joyous family milestone. I made sure to spend time with my father, helping him with odd jobs around the garden, just as I had when I was a teenager, a familiar routine that provided the perfect cover for my subtle reconnaissance. I needed to know Clara's precise movements, her patterns, her vulnerabilities. The day before the wedding, the house was a hive of activity. Relatives began to arrive, filling the rooms with laughter and chatter. Clara, however, was increasingly sequestered in her room, emerging only for brief, stressed appearances, clutching her meticulously organized bridal planner. That evening, as I had predicted, she announced her intention to take a long, luxurious bath, followed by a thorough hair treatment. "I need to look absolutely perfect for tomorrow," she declared to no one in particular, her voice tight with pre-wedding nerves. "My stylist said my hair needs to be super soft and shiny for the updo." She smiled, a little nervously, and then disappeared into her en-suite bathroom, the door clicking shut behind her. This was it. The moment I had planned for, waited for nearly a decade. My heart pounded, a controlled rhythm, not of fear, but of intense focus. I had rehearsed this moment countless times in my mind. Earlier that day, during a busy moment when Clara was out with her bridesmaids, I had carefully positioned myself. I knew she kept her expensive, salon-grade shampoo and conditioner in a clear, ornate dispenser on the shower ledge, a little fancy contraption that dispensed both products from separate compartments. I had, weeks ago, acquired an identical dispenser, an empty one, purchased online from a specialty bath store. And I had a small, discreet bottle of the hair removal cream, the exact same formulation that had ruined my prom night, meticulously prepared. I waited for about 20 minutes, ensuring Clara was fully immersed in her bath, the sound of running water and faint singing drifting from behind the closed door. The rest of the family was in the living room, watching television, their attention completely diverted. Moving silently, my movements precise and economical, I slipped into the main family bathroom, adjacent to Clara's en-suite. From there, I could hear her, oblivious. I took a deep breath, the air thick with the scent of fresh flowers brought for the wedding. My hand closed around the spare dispenser in my pocket, the cool plastic a comforting weight. I knew the bathroom layout from memory, every tile, every fixture. I entered Clara's bathroom, moving with the stealth of a cat burglar. The room was steamy, filled with the floral scent of her bath bombs. The shower glass was fogged over, obscuring her, but I could still hear her humming. My eyes immediately went to the clear dispenser on the ledge. I swiftly unscrewed the shampoo compartment, a quick, practiced movement. My heart was a drum in my chest, but my hands were steady. I poured out a significant portion of her expensive shampoo, letting it drain silently down the plug hole. Then, with practiced ease, I uncapped the smaller bottle of hair removal cream and slowly, deliberately, poured the entire contents into the shampoo compartment. It was the same color, the same consistency as her original shampoo, a thick, pearlescent white liquid. I stirred it subtly with a clean cotton bud I had brought, ensuring a thorough mix, then resealed the compartment, leaving no trace. I cleaned up any minuscule drips with another cotton bud, then placed the dispenser back exactly as I had found it. A quick glance around, a final sniff for any telltale chemical smells, and I was out, closing the door behind me, my presence leaving no discernible mark. The whole operation took less than 90 seconds. I returned to my room, my breathing finally returning to normal, a faint tremor running through my hands. It was done. The trap was set. The next morning, the air was thick with a nervous energy, the sort that precedes a major event. I woke early, feeling an almost serene calm. I went downstairs to the kitchen, making myself a cup of tea. My parents were already up, bustling about, making last-minute preparations. I heard my mother's phone buzz then again, more insistently. She picked it up, her brow furrowing. "Hello, what, canceled? But why, oh my goodness. No, yes, I understand. The reception will go ahead as a party. Right. Yes, thank you for letting me know." She hung up, her face a mask of shock, then looked at my father, her voice trembling. "The wedding's canceled. Clara's called it off." My father dropped the coffee mug he was holding, thankfully empty. "What, canceled? What happened? Is she ill?" My mother shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "She won't come out of her room. Apparently she had a terrible accident with her hair last night. She can't be seen." A quiet, almost imperceptible sense of profound satisfaction spread through me, a warmth that settled deep in my chest. It was a vindication, a moment of profound, quiet triumph. I continued sipping my tea, my expression carefully neutral. My parents, after a brief, bewildered discussion, began making calls to inform the arriving guests. The confusion was palpable, but as the news spread, a strange undercurrent of understanding began to ripple through the house. My father, after a phone call with Clara's fiancé's parents, relayed the details. "Clara used some hair removal cream by accident last night. Large chunks of her hair came out. She's absolutely devastated. Refuses to go through with the wedding if she can't look perfect." My mother sighed, then added, almost as an afterthought, "She thinks it was sabotage. But who would do such a thing?" My parents looked at me, a flicker of suspicion in their eyes, then quickly dismissed it. "No, Arthur wouldn't do something like that. He's too sensible, too quiet, too good." The wedding part was indeed canceled, but the reception went ahead, transformed into an impromptu celebration, a party without a bride. Guests arrived, bewildered but curious. The air was buzzing with whispers, speculations, and half-formed theories. I was there, dressed impeccably, mingling with friends and family, a picture of calm amusement. I caught up with people I hadn't seen in years, genuinely enjoying the atmosphere, the excellent food, the free-flowing champagne. My father, finding a moment alone with me, pulled me aside, his voice low. "Arthur, did you know anything about this? Clara's convinced someone sabotaged her." I met his gaze, my eyes clear and steady. "Father," I began, my voice calm and measured, "do you remember my prom night 9 years ago, when my hair fell out just hours before the biggest night of my teenage life?" He blinked, a flicker of memory in his eyes. "Of course I do, son. We were very upset about that." "And do you remember who caused it, Father?" I pressed, my voice still even. He looked down, then back at me. "Clara, she admitted to it, but she said it was an accident, a prank gone wrong." "An accident, Father," I said, a slight, almost imperceptible smile touching my lips. "A deliberate act of cruelty, timed to cause maximum public humiliation. I had to shave my head, remember? I went to prom bald because of her." He was silent for a long moment, the noise of the party swirling around us. Then he let out a long sigh. "You mean you did this, Arthur?" he asked, his voice low, a strange mix of shock and dawning comprehension. I nodded, a simple, unapologetic gesture. I waited 9 years, Father, 9 years for the perfect moment. She chose the timing, not I. Her fairytale wedding, her demand for perfection, provided the symmetry. It was an act of justice, Father, not malice. To make her understand, truly understand, what she did to me. The shame, the public spectacle, the feeling of utter helplessness. I simply returned the favor with precision and patience. She destroyed my perfect night. I destroyed hers. My father stared at me, his mouth slightly agape. He looked upset, yes, but there was also a glimmer of something else in his eyes, something akin to grudging respect, or perhaps a belated understanding. "I'm not saying it was right, Arthur," he said finally, his voice softer, "but I understand why you did it. What she did all those years ago was equally wrong. We perhaps didn't handle it well then." He looked away, a cloud of regret passing over his face. She needed to learn a lesson. My mother, joining us then, having overheard snippets of the conversation, gasped, "Arthur, you didn't." I nodded again, meeting her gaze. She looked torn, her maternal instincts warring with a newfound understanding. "I'm terribly upset that the wedding couldn't go ahead, darling," she said, her voice laced with disappointment. "But that prank she played on you was absolutely dreadful, and she never truly apologized, did she?" She shook her head, a sigh escaping her lips. "I suppose. She deserved it, in a way." Their understanding, their belated validation, was almost as fulfilling as the act of revenge itself. It was as if, after all these years, they finally saw me, finally acknowledged the depth of the wound Clara had inflicted. The weight I had carried for so long, the quiet hum of resentment, finally began to dissipate, leaving behind a lightness I hadn't known was possible. Clara remained sequestered in her room throughout the day, refusing to emerge, her humiliation complete. The reception turned into a lively party, a spontaneous celebration of life and friendship, albeit under very unusual circumstances. My wife and I, who had traveled together for this event, enjoyed a wonderful evening, catching up with old friends, sharing stories, and yes, quietly laughing about the extremely cold, calculated revenge I had served my sister. The satisfaction was profound, a deep, abiding sense of justice served. It wasn't about hurting Clara, not truly. It was about balance, about restoring equilibrium, about closing a painful chapter that had long overshadowed my life. I had walked through that door of resentment for nearly a decade, but now I had finally found the other side. My new normal was one of liberation. The memory of prom night no longer held the power to sting, no longer dictated my choices or colored my interactions. It was simply a memory, a story of a wrong made right. My relationship with my parents, surprisingly, felt stronger, built on a new foundation of honesty and understanding. They had, perhaps for the first time, truly seen the depth of my character, the quiet resilience and the meticulous planning that had gone into my life, and now into my carefully orchestrated retribution. As the night wound down and guests began to depart, I stood on the porch, bidding farewell to an old neighbor. He chuckled, shaking his head. "Well, Arthur, that was quite the day. 9 years, you say? That's some patience, son." I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. "Some things are worth waiting for, wouldn't you agree?" He nodded, a knowing glint in his eye. "Indeed, but I heard Clara's fiancé, Rupert, isn't too pleased. He's furious, apparently, says he's going to get her to press charges against whoever did this." My smile widened. "Is that so?" I mused, feeling not a ripple of concern. Let him try. There was no evidence, no witnesses, just a theory. My revenge was perfectly executed, untraceable, a phantom of justice. Besides, I had a feeling that after this public humiliation, Clara would be more interested in disappearing from public view than in drawing further attention to herself through a legal battle. She couldn't possibly win without admitting her own past wrongdoing. My final thought as I headed back inside, the night air cool and fresh against my face, was not of Clara's humiliation, but of the quiet, enduring power of patience. Some seeds take years to grow, but the fruit, when finally ripe, is all the sweeter for the wait. And as for Clara, perhaps one day she would truly understand that some lessons are best learned not from a lecture, but from experiencing the very pain you once inflicted. I, for one, was finally, truly free.